The grim grey sky of late autumn hung over the crashing surf that hammered upon the shores of Daneland. Leaden clouds boiled overhead, and the waves boomed rhythmically as the blood-keel surged through the whitecaps, its oars digging at the water and thrusting the vessel ever closer to the coastline. Horsa stood at the prow of the ship and stared past the carven Drake's Head at the coil of acrid black smoke that rose up from the distant strip of land. Waves broke in frothy haze upon the wet pebble shore beneath the walled settlement of Grimberg, but no guard stood watch by torchlight. "Something's wrong," Horsa called over his shoulder to his captain. Ingvar Bolafsson, captain of the Bloodkeel, strode down the deck between the rows of oarsmen who strained against the waves to where his first mate stood. Ingvar was an Angle, nearly 6 feet of solid muscle, crowned by a thick head of flaxen hair, into which he had woven several ornaments of bone and bronze. He looked along Horsa's pointed arm to the bare stretch of beach ahead. "Too much smoke for any hearth fire," he agreed. "No one to meet us either. I hope we haven't been beaten to it." And that was the crux of the matter. It was far too late in the season for a raid this far from safe ports. But it had been a complicated summer. Mutiny had divided the once large warband of Ingvar Volafsson, and after a savage sea battle, the Angle had been left with just one of his 3 ships and a meagre crew of 13 to man it. This attack on a remote Danish settlement was a last-ditch attempt to salvage something from an otherwise disastrous season. Soon winter would let in, and the sea lanes would become too rough to travel, forcing the raiders back to their homelands. But all knew that their captain's pride had been dented, and by the gods he would not return home empty-handed. The 12 years Horsa had spent at sea had toughened him. When he left Jutland, he had been a boy, a thin stripling of a lad. But now his body was hard and lean. His beard was full, but kept carefully trimmed. His hands were calloused from pulling on oars and salty ropes, and his face was burned brown by the glare of the sun. He had joined Ingvar's crew 5 years ago, after he was forced to flee the first group of raiders he had taken up with, due to a dispute with the captain's brother. The rest of the crew was an assorted gallery of rogues, mostly Angles, with a sprinkling of Jutes and the occasional Saxon and Geat. Most of them were outlaws and outcasts with prices on their heads, leaving sea roving the only career open to them. The shallow keel crunched against the stones as the boat was beached. Its crew shipped their oars and jumped out into the foaming surf to haul the vessel up out of the water. The beach was silent, save for the cawing of gulls and the booming surf. Horsa doubted that there was anything of value here. If there was, then the men of Grimberg would be amassed on the beach to defend it amidst a blowing of horns and clashing of shields. Ingvar led the way up the grassy knoll towards the wooden palisade of the village. The crew followed close, gripping their axes and shields tightly in case any ambush awaited them. As they crested the hill, they stopped and stared at the carnage before them with sinking stomachs. Their fears had been well grounded. Someone had got there first. Charred stumps were all that remained of the halls and buildings of Grimberg. The wooden palisade had been completely burned away in places, and the sod huts within had been torn up, their contents looted or destroyed. Black smoke still rose up in great plumes, choking and offensive to the nostrils. The corpses of the townsfolk, men, women, and children, lay along the trackways, hacked open and blackened by the fire and smoke. Ravens had descended in their hundreds to gorge themselves upon this grisly feast. Whoever had done this had shown no mercy. "Bastards!" howled Ingvar at the grey, overcast sky. It was a sentiment shared by all the crew of the Bloodkeel. The stinking corpses and glowing embers of the town symbolized the failure of their raid and the miserable end to a terrible season. They descended the slope and made their way through the ruined town, Horsa prodding a nearby corpse with his spear, cracking open the charred skin, and he watched the liquids ooze freely. "These bodies are nearly fresh," he said. "This raid was recent."